Hi everybody, this is a quick little tutorial add-on to the One with More Mino, a great new pattern I love from Sincerely Jen Patterns. I love this bag, but I really need my bags to have a top zipper because I'm really clumsy and dump them over a lot. So I added one to my bag and then I got some questions about how I did that. So I'm going to try to explain it with this really low rent video. I apologize for the quality, it's my first. So first, you are going to decide how far in you want your zipper from the top of your bag. I was not really happy with how close mine was to the top of my tester bag, so in this video I'm going to make it a little bit farther from the top. I wanted to make it about a ½ inch farther than it was last time, so hopefully it's about 1¼ inches down from the top of the bag. Here you see me measuring 1 7/8 from the top of the bag. I forgot to mention that I also printed 2 copies of my pattern and taped them together. They're mirror images. I just don't like cutting on the fold, so that's why my pattern might look a little bit different than yours. But as I mentioned, I'm marking down 1 7/8 inches from the top of that pattern piece. Now I am going to account for the seam allowance in sewing the zipper on. So what you saw me gesture there was the 3/8 inch seam allowance I'm going to use when sewing my zipper in. So twice that is 3/4 inch. So now what you see is me measuring 3/4 inch down from the line that I just made, and I'm going to mark that as well. I said down, but I meant down for the way that this pattern appears on your screen. The line that you're going to draw is actually between the line that you just made and the top of the pattern piece. So make a mark that is 3/4 inch from the line you just made towards the top of the pattern piece. Now we're going to fold the pattern so that you can make a second pattern piece. This keeps you from having to cut the pattern that you just taped together, hopefully maybe a little bit more neatly than I did. Where I'm folding here is on that line that is 1 7/8 inches down from the top. So it's the line that's farther down on your pattern piece. Don't ask me why I have it upside down in this video. But what you want is the larger of the folds to appear here. I'm using a legal piece of paper. This is the larger kind of notepad. I believe it's 14 inches total in length. And that was just what I had laying around. You can use any kind of paper that you had. I just wanted a piece that was big enough to fit on the pattern here. And so what I'm going to do is use the folded area of the pattern that I just folded down to make my second pattern piece. This is going to be what I'm going to call my top lining pattern piece. So I'm just making sure that my line is straight here. You could totally just trace over the folded piece of the pattern that you just made if you would like to. But what we're doing is we're marking that larger piece of the, excuse me, it's not large, it's going to be smaller, but we're going to mark from the larger line so that you end up with the top of the pattern piece down by a length of 1 7/8 inches from the top of that pattern piece. And the reason why I'm doing this is because of the seam allowances. You can't just cut the thing in half and then have the correct measurements in your pattern. That's why we're doing this whole exercise. What you'll end up with if you follow this little tutorial is a top lining pattern piece and a bottom lining pattern piece. These are 2 new pattern pieces that account for that zipper in your lining, approximately 1¼ inch down from the finished seam, plus a 3/8 inch seam allowance to attach the zipper, plus your seam allowance at the top of the lining to attach it to your exterior, which is how I came to the measurements used. Now fold on the top line, which is the one you drew that is closer to the top of the pattern piece. And when you're done, you'll have 2 pattern pieces here. The new bottom lining panel, which is the one we just folded on that top line closer to the top of the pattern, and the second lining pattern piece, which is like the one that I made from my yellow legal pad and I'm now going to cut out. You'll see that this is the original lining pattern piece straight from the pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do is basically just ensure that these 2 new pattern pieces together are the same size as the original lining pattern piece. Hopefully this also helps you in case you'd like to do this with the lining pattern pieces for another bag. So I'm folding down my 3/8 inch seam allowance on either pattern piece. There's nothing absolute about that 3/8 inch seam allowance, so if you prefer a different seam allowance, you can certainly make yours with a different one, but you will need to change the math. So once I've gotten these both folded down, this is going to be what they look like when they're sewn with actual fabric. I'm going to go ahead and squish these together and just compare using my original lining pattern piece just to make sure that they're the same size. So the yellow piece kind of scooched away from the white piece, but you can see here, basically they fit, so success. The next thing that I'm going to demonstrate is the concept for installing the zipper. I don't have my pattern pieces cut out yet, but I did not want to lose my light or my train of thought with my ADHD. So first you're going to measure in from your new bottom lining piece 1.5 inches. It's best to align the top of a quilting ruler with the fold on your lining piece because the sides of the pattern for this bag are not square. Don't draw as big of a line as I did here. Remember, you'll be making small marks within your seam allowance on your actual lining fabric, but I'm just demonstrating, so I got a little carried away. Now these marks that we're making are going to be your guides for installing your zipper. I'll show you how to finish the zipper end in the next clip, but basically you're going to align the finish end of your zipper tape with the mark on the left-hand side of your back lining fabric. If you've decided to add pockets, make sure that the lining piece that you want to be on the back of your bag is the one where you follow these next steps. Align the finished zipper end with the mark on the left, and you're going to angle your zipper down to the right and out of your seam, beginning at the 1.5 inch mark on the right. Now here I am finishing that zipper end that I just mentioned a moment ago. I was trying to use a clip here, but it didn't end up working out. Essentially, you're going to fold the zipper tape back on itself and then somehow finish that side. Here I'm using a lighter to melt the zipper onto itself. That's only going to work if you have a nylon zipper tape, and I really recommend you watch someone else's tutorial on this method. I'm not an expert. It rarely comes out even for me, and I'm just kind of doing the best I can here. But you fold the corner of that zipper end back on itself, and then you can either baste it using your sewing machine, or you can follow the method that I'm doing here. I think I've also seen people use staples. But whatever method you like, there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube. What we're doing is just kind of finishing that zipper end so that you're going to have a nice clean edge and your zipper won't run off the end. So once you've done that and you're satisfied that your zipper won't just zip right off into a black hole of curse words, I'm going to demonstrate how you would install this zipper. Now in this step, pretend that my pattern pieces are your actual zipper lining pieces. I'm sorry, they're not zipper lining pieces, they're fabric lining pieces cut out of fabric. Like I mentioned before, our goal here is that we're going to align the finished edge that I'm demonstrating here with the top left of the lining piece. So we're going to take the top outer edge of that zipper tape and we are going to line it up with the mark that you made inside your seam allowance with that bottom zipper lining piece. So here I am, I'm lining it up, and then you can either use clips, you can use double stick tape and clips, which is what I usually do, or you can go ahead and clip it, take it to your sewing machine, and then baste along that edge. Now, when you get to this 1.5 inch mark on the right-hand side, you want to pull the zipper out of the seam so that it does not get caught between your lower lining piece and the upper lining piece. I usually clip it, which I kind of showed there. If you don't baste, you can do this all in one step. I would recommend that you use some double-sided tape to sandwich your zipper between your lining pieces. And you can see me there, I'm showing that you could clip it. Make sure that you clip the end of that zipper tape that's kind of just running off into infinity out of that seam. And once you've sewn that edge together, remember we're using a 3/8 inch seam allowance there, turn back the top lining piece and just top stitch along the top of that zipper. I like to top stitch at about 1/8 of an inch along that top lining piece. And you do this with the other side and you're done. Like I said, thanks again for watching. This was my first video tutorial, so I really appreciate your grace here. And I can't wait to see all of your bags.